So then guys, today I have here the new MinisForum. This here is the X1 AI, and I'm going to do a bit of an unboxing in just a second, but we're going to compare this to the Mac Mini, because obviously I think this is definitely a good rival kind of Windows Mini PC compared to what Apple offer right now, especially that you can get this equipped with, say, the AMD AI line, the new one here. And in fact, if we've got in here the actual AI 9-7, we've got the 370 inside of it. This is what it's been spec'd out with, and yeah, this is going to be really cool to actually compare to one of these. So with that then, let's get started then with the unboxing. So here we are then, here's the MinisForum box here, and as you can see we've got the X1 AI series inside. Now obviously if I just pull this open to show you, here it is. It literally takes up the whole box inside. This is the actual mini PC, and that is pretty cool actually. I do like it. It reminds me of an old Mac Mini, as it were, that does. I do like that design, and obviously just moving the packaging and everything out the way here. And underneath what we've got inside of it, we do also have our power cable to use that. That's quite useful. It's a sort of 2-pin sort of one there. HDMI cable. That's also quite useful, obviously, to get connected to our external monitor. We can also turn this to be vertical if we wanted that. And then obviously we've got some bits and pieces for the NVMe. We want to do some upgrades there. And then we've also got a bracket here to stick it and mount it onto the back of a monitor. What is pretty cool to see here with everything. Now, with the MinisForum X1 AI here, all unboxed and everything, I want to compare it to the Mac Mini. And in fact, I've even got here an old school other design Mac Mini. This is the design before that. And I want to show you guys the actual comparison here in sizes. And also I want to go over some of the port differences as well, what we get with this and also what we get with the Mac Mini. So let's take a look. So here we have the MinisForum. This is the X1. And look, this here is an older Mac Mini. Do you see what I mean? The design's very similar. And just tilting up here, obviously we've got ports here on the front, what I'll talk about in just a moment. But obviously there was no ports on the front of the older design. This is a very old Mac Mini, as you can tell here, because it's got the infrared port on the front here. But obviously the design language stayed the same for many years now. But just look at that. We just got that bit of plastic at the bottom, really. It's the main difference on the MinisForum there. But that is pretty cool. It's very similar. And even if I just switch this out now and let's say look at the new Mac Mini, obviously the new Mac Mini is definitely smaller with everything, but yeah, this is quite impressive. Do remember with the MinisForum we have the power supply built inside of this too, so this is really impressive to see. And obviously there's going to be lots of other upgrade features. Now we've got the ports here, we've got more here on the MinisForum at the front compared to the Mac Mini. You've got more USB ports here, you know, the A ones and USB-C. But then obviously if I turn it around to the side, we do have an SD card slot, but we don't have any SD card slot whatsoever here on the current Mac Mini. But if I do flip it round to the back, you can see we definitely do have a lot of different kind of ports here, the different variations here. There's definitely more here on the MinisForum, but obviously the Mac Mini is far more compact, far more smaller as well. But yeah, it's quite interesting to see the actual differences here with the kind of sort of ports that we actually have. We've got far more. We've got the Oculink, for example, 2 Ethernet ports and things like this too. What's really impressive, what I'll talk about in just a moment. So with that there, let's talk about the actual specs of this MinisForum, and also that you can actually upgrade parts of this, something that you can't do on a Mac Mini. So once you buy this, you can upgrade RAM and also your NVMe storage and things like this. Let's cover over all of those details next of all. So inside of this mini PC, we actually have the AMD Ryzen AI 9 HX 370, and this is a really powerful mobile chip. It comes with 12 cores inside of it. It's 24 threads, and the base clock starts at 2 GHz. We can go all the way up to 5.1 GHz. Now, something else what is amazing here, we also have a Radeon 890M iGPU, and you can actually share quite a bit of the RAM over to this if you want to do that. What's really awesome, what I'll talk about in a little bit of a moment, because I've decided to share 16 gigabytes, and you'll see why in a moment. But it does support RDNA 3.5, 2,900 megahertz on this one, and like I said, you can actually put up to 96 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM at 5,600 megahertz. There's also Wi-Fi 7 built into this, Bluetooth 5.4, and inside of it for storage, this is the best bit I think, you've actually got space for 3 times PCI 4.0 M.2 SSDs, so you can put 3 NVMe storage modules inside of this, what is amazing. And then what also makes this amazing too is that the actual PSU is actually built into this as well, because quite a lot of mini PCs have them as external. This one is all in one, and of course it also runs Windows 11. For ports wise though, it's really great too. We actually have on the rear here two 2.5 gigabit ports here. We also have a USB 3.2 port. We've also, as you can see right here at the top, we've got a USB 4 port. We've also got an Oculink port. We've also got HDMI, and then we've also got a display port too. And then on the side, we've also got a normal size SD card slot, and then after this we flip round to the front. We've also got two more USB 3.2 ports and another USB 4 port, and of course a headphone port, and also the co-pilot and power button too. So with all those specs and everything, what's quite powerful, I'd actually say, you probably guys want to know how powerful it really is in real life. So what I've done is I've done a load of kind of different tests out there. First of all, what I've decided to do is a Blackmagic speed test here, disk speed test. I'm going to compare this to this Mac Mini right here, and let's have a look at the speed difference we got. Well, as you can see right here, to be honest, I'm not surprised by this, because obviously Apple like to cheapen out on their sort of storage speeds on their lower spec machines. We can see here that obviously the read speed and the write speed, I'm going to say this, it's almost double what we're getting here on the MinisForum with its 1 terabyte compared to the 256 gigabyte we've got on the Mac Mini here. And moving on after this, I decided to do a load of other sort of benchmarks for CPU, GPU, video, editing and things like this. Let's go through all of them in one go right now. First of all, let's have a look then at Geekbench 6. Well, we can see the results right here. The Mac Mini did do a very good job. Do remember this is a 10-core CPU inside of this, and this managed to give us 3,987 for single-core performance, and that is just unmatched, across the board in single core performance here. But then for multi-core performance, it scored 14,786. But with the MinisForum, with that AI7 370, that's a 12-core setup, we got 2,914 in single-core performance. What is, between like M2 and M3 kind of performance there in single-core kind of performance. But in multi-core performance, the 12-core, 15,437. So yeah, just a little bit ahead there than the M4 inside of the Mac Mini. And just in case you want to know what that meant in Cinebench, because obviously it does it a little bit differently here. So Cinebench 2024, well, you can see here in the single core performance, again, the Mac Mini way out in front here, 178 compared to 119. But what is very surprising here, even though we've only got 2 extra cores here, and they're slower, with that single core kind of performance there, with the performance ones in the actual AMD one, well, we're actually getting a score of 1,238 over 962. It's very impressive to see here from AMD. But moving on after this, let's go and have a look at some graphics kind of benchmarking scores. I'm starting out with Geekbench 6, OpenCL on both of these. Well, with the Mac Mini M4 10-core, we scored 37,005. It was quite impressive, but again, the MinisForum X1 with the AI7 370 scored 52,763, what is super impressive. And then running 3D Mark still Nomad, well, what we got here on this, the light version, is that with the Mac Mini, we managed to get an average of 29 frames per second, whereas the MinisForum, well, with that AMD AI7, it managed to get 42 frames per second on average. That is very impressive to see here. Now, next of all, I've decided to use DaVinci Resolve, and what I've decided to do here is get a 10-minute 10-bit video in HEVC and then reduce its, original 100% speed file down to 25% speed and let that render and time it. And let's have a look at how long it took to do this on both these machines. Well, it took the Mac Mini 119 seconds to complete this, whereas the MinisForum X1, well, that took 121 seconds. Do remember that the Mac Mini with the M4 does have the video encoder and decoder, dedicated one for that, whereas the AMD would not have this. But then for actual exporting, how long did that take if we changed the video back to 100% speed? Well, we can see that obviously the Mac Mini just beat out the MinisForum, like I said, because it has that built-in decoder and encoder. So it did it in 132 seconds, whereas the MinisForum did it just 5 seconds longer. It took 137 seconds for this. So it is very, very close indeed if you did do video editing on both of these. So moving on from this, I've decided to run a few games, and starting out with Cyberpunk 2077, 1080p ultra settings, no ray tracing or upscaling. What's the average frames per second that we got? Well, the Mac Mini M4 could only give us 24 frames per second with its 10-core GPU, whereas the MinisForum X1 with the 8090M gave us 46 frames per second, what's really impressive. But what these machines are designed for is to turn on things like FSR and also frame generation, and also have it like on a balance mode. And you can see here the result here at the bottom that we actually got 97 frames per second if you turned on those settings, and this is really great to see. Now, Cyberpunk was running on crossover on the Mac Mini, but for this next game I've decided to run Shadow of the Tomb Raider, because this was actually built from the ground up for Intel kind of Macs out there using Rosetta 2. So let's have a look how many frames per second we got here. Well, with the Mac Mini we got 36 frames per second, and then with the MinisForum we got 44 frames per second. Remember, this is on the high setting here, and yes, at 1080p. So yeah, it's definitely impressive here what we're getting with the MinisForum. But then, to make this even fairer, I've decided then to run Resident Evil 4 at 1080p with no ray tracing or upscaling, average frames per second, because obviously this one has been designed for Apple Silicon from the ground up for the Mac Mini, as it were. And you can see here we've got 46 frames per second, whereas with the X1, the AMD AI7 370 with its 89M, well, that gave us 58 frames per second, so definitely faster there. So with those benchmarks there, that is quite impressive. Now, one thing I'm just going to say also that the MinisForum's also got is also an Oculus link. And what this means is that using this port, we can actually connect an external GPU to this. So you could even connect, say, an RTX 5090 to this if you wanted to. It's a bit extreme for this scenario, but the point is that is something what you have as a massive advantage. You can connect a dedicated graphics card to this, whereas with the Mac Mini you can't really do that at all. But the big question you guys want to know is, how much does this start out at? Well, I am going to say, because of tariffs and things like this, in US dollars, this starts out at $929 US. What you might think straight away, whoa, that is way too much. This starts at $599 US. But what you've got to remember this has got 256 gigabytes of storage starting out and 16 gigabytes of RAM. We've got 32 gigabytes of RAM inside of it, 1 terabyte storage, and we could do all those other upgrades. We can add 2 more NVMEs inside. We've got 1 in here already. We've also got the Oculus link. We've got all those other ports too. And when you actually spec'd up a Mac Mini M4 with actually having, saying, 1 terabyte of storage built into it, and also giving it 32 gigabytes of RAM, it actually even overtakes the likes of the Mac Mini in like-for-like kind of pricing there. So this is quite amazing what you've actually got here. And like I said, for the first time in ages, this is a device where you actually have the actual power inside. You have a big brick and things like this. And like I said, the potential to upgrade the RAM and upgrade, say, the SSD, the NVMe is really good. Plus, you've got things like Wi-Fi 7 built into this too, and also loads of other bits and pieces, what makes it absolutely amazing in my opinion. And I do think this is definitely a good alternative to, say, the Mac Mini, especially if you want a bit more power from it. You know, if you want a bit more RAM and things like this and don't want to fork out that much more on the baseline kind of Mac Mini, this is definitely a good alternative. And you can check out this MinisForum's X1 AI machine in the description below if you're really interested in getting it, because I do think this is actually quite a great device out there. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you think this is a great device? Is something that you would consider? Well, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And with that as well, guys, it's time to wrap up this video too. So if you have enjoyed watching it, please do press the like button. As always, if you want to hear the latest technology news, reviews and comparisons, make sure you subscribe to the channel and also hit that notification bell. Until next time, guys, I'll see you really soon. Take care. Bye bye.